Ruth, you're obviously, the freshest victim, unfortunately, dealing with this. I mean, just 8 years ago, and obviously the pain is still very raw. But what is the impact on you and your family from this, sudden violent death?
I think that's really an important point, and I'm going to answer it in two ways. First of all, what they do say about victims is they're the orphans of the justice system. So, so this is in terms of whether you look at it in terms of anger, but I look at it in terms of what has to be built up. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, obviously, I'm in the early stages of a very high profile murder. But the reason I wrote the book is called The Unveiling. And part of it is dealing with my own grief. But the other real reason of writing it is to lift the veil, lift the curtain of what is happening to families as they go through this justice system. And I think it's a really important point that there's two impacts on the family. Okay, one is we have two descriptions. We're homicide survivors, which is a psychological term, which really deals with the aspects of the sudden, violent finality of the death, and that there are periods in the person's life where those continue to happen, these grief spasms, they call them, and other experiences, because we have no way of ending this loss, because now we're going to switch to the criminal system. And the criminal system is the other side of how it impacts the family. Somebody like myself have been to two major trials, sentencing. Now we're having an appeal again for Catherine McBanawa. I'm mentioning this because they have a very large audience that follows the case. So this is just some of the news that they might not have. And so the actual feeling and experience of being a victim is really for the rest of your life. When you have our case, it is really a situation where there's going to be several more trials or several more different things that can happen. We still had a mistrial and so forth. So there's a murder for hire. 3 people already are in prison, just to give Candace a little bit of my backstory. And one person is now in jail, who's a member of the ex-family of my son's ex-wife's family. And we're waiting for a trial to come up sometime in early spring 2023. So we are what I call our experience of being victims. It's a life sentence also, because you never have a chance to breathe. If you finish one trial, we just went through this, it's sentencing. Then there's a request for bail. Then there's another series of planning hearings and several more trials. And then you shift. So as a victim, this is really important. We started out as a victim with Tallahassee Police Department. They have a very, very, very good victim liaison. We then switched to the state attorney's office, who also has a victim liaison person who's excellent. And now we have, for the appeals, it's another person. So what I'm trying to say is the victim has no real way of continuously getting a lot of support, a lot of information. There has been a very interesting law that actually comes out of California. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Candace. It's called Marcy's Law. And Marcy's Law is all about victims' rights. It's a famous, I forgot his name, from Silicon Valley, who funded this. His sister was murdered by her boyfriend. And he started a victims' rights legislation strategy, actually also grassroots advocacy and so forth. And he's had it passed in many states. So we're in Florida with this, with our current murder situation. And Florida just adopted Marcy's Law in 2019. So that has ways in which the victim should be consulted and so forth. But with all of the sort of public sort of acknowledgement of the victims, it's really not a very well monitored program from the point of view the victim gets lost, because in our case, it's very glamorous, it's very glitzy. My son was acclaimed, and we have been really, really privileged with a lot of media, 2 sessions of Dateline, 2 hours, to ABC, and multiple media contact. But they're interested really in the crime because of the intrigue of the crime. So the victim is really the backdrop. the family of the victim, is really a backdrop to all of, let's call it, the front stage of what's going on. And that's why I actually wrote the book, to really show the public what it's like to be a victim and what are the experiences of going through the trial life.